Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Advancement Center, and welcome back to the world of magic and miracles and the continued reading of The Magic of Life by Robert Young. And I am continuing with chapter 47. Henry was experiencing problems with the major suppliers for the plaza. Simon Phillips was doing a marvelous job of managing the movement of supplies throughout the organization. Somehow he was managing to bring in those items that seemed to disappear quickly without too much problem. But when the Sandra D returned with its 400 or so passengers, Henry had to start pulling in a few favors. Simon Phillips had to pull out a few miracles. Although it had seemed impossible to feed all these people and keep the town active and not deplete them of normal supplies, the combination of Henry and Simon seemed to be managing. In the middle of this critical time, Simon lost contact with his best supplier. He had been told that the supplier had gone out of business. The supplier, who lived on the island, advised Simon that his source had dried up, but it didn't take Simon long to figure out that his source must have been via the Ridge Hunter, the boat that was taken into custody with the Sandra D. When Henry found out, all he had to say was, "You can't keep dealing through crooked dealers. We have to open our own supply source, and we have to do it today." Simon Phillips agreed. "I have no idea how to do it, but I'll make some calls and check around to see what can be done." Henry said, "That's fine. We'll meet again this afternoon and see what we can do." Henry knew that they had exceeded all supply restrictions. They had exceeded the customs levies and the requirements of the mainland. They had built accommodations without approval, and they had managed to service everything themselves. Henry also had a fear of those who would like to shut them down. He thought to have a legal source of supply would be quite difficult, particularly to have it set up within a very short period of time. Henry sat with it until his mind went into turmoil. He soon realized that if he kept thinking that way, it would only delay getting everything he needed. So he got up and went to the cupboard and took out his backpack and his favorite shoes and hat. Without another thought, Henry picked up the phone and said, "If anybody needs me, they'll have to wait. I'm going for a walk. I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. If there are any queries, direct them to Simon and let him know I'll be back after my walk." The familiar voice from the desk replied, "Roger, Mr. Olson." Henry smiled as he knew that he had made the right decision. He put down the phone and walked around the room looking for his cane. He remembered that he had left it downstairs in the foyer. He picked up his few emergency rations and his water and placed them in the backpack. He donned the bag, hat, and shoes and checked himself in the mirror and decided that he looked the part before he headed to the downstairs counter to collect his stick. He told the staff he would see them in a few hours. They all waved and smiled as he walked off. They recognized that this was a special time for Henry, and that if he needed to go for a walk, then obviously there was something very important to be sorted out. Henry headed off back towards his home, into the little park and out through the gate. As he walked through the gate and felt the change in atmosphere, he knew the day would be good for him. The cool breeze caressed him, and the sunlight felt warm as it took away the pain of the last few days. He realized that he had been working for so long during and after the cyclone. He had cleared the passengers on the Sandra D and then had to take them back again. He supported all of those who needed support in the town, and while he had enjoyed it and it made him tired, although he had enjoyed it, it had made him tired. And as he walked through the cavern with the sunlight shining down on him, he could feel himself being replenished. He had only walked a few yards when he heard the familiar sound of the big cat. He slowed and waited until it came to him. The cat had such wild green eyes, and Henry knew there was nothing better than bridging the gap between the wildness of nature and humanity. As he waited, the big cat came close, and there beside it were two young ones. Henry knew that he would not be welcome to touch the young ones, so he stood still while his old friend approached him and leaned against his leg. He put his hand down slowly and gently and let the energy from his hand meet the energy of the cat. Without touching the cat, he felt the connection and felt the vibration of the most unusual purr that he had felt from any animal. As the energy flowed through his hand, he could feel the warmth coming from the cat. He also could feel the natural aggression start to disappear and a feeling of calmness come over them all. Before long, two little kittens were beside Henry's other leg, copying their mother. This was such a beautiful moment for Henry, but he knew that he had to have his eyes peeled because the father was not quite as comfortable with Henry. Whenever it turned up, its aggression was quite severe. So he dared not touch the kittens, not because of the mother, but just in case the father arrived. He soon sensed the presence of the father, and as he looked up, he saw another set of wild green eyes looking out from the bushes, only a meter away. Henry's expectation of a hiss and a roar did not occur. The eyes stayed where they were and did not move. The mother cat wrapped herself further around Henry's legs, drawing him towards the kittens. Henry took a deep breath and swallowed, then slowly crouched down, at all times being very conscious of the father being only a meter away. As he crouched down, a movement came from the bushes. Henry was about to jump up, but to his surprise, the father cat simply ambled out of the bushes, as calm as the kittens were, and stood and looked Henry right in the eye. Henry knew he had been welcomed into the family and slowly brought his hand over the top of the small kittens to allow them to feel his energy. As soon as he did this, they both lifted their heads and licked his hand. There was an excitement in Henry and the cats, and even though they were all very cautious, the little kittens broke all the rules. They began playing with Henry while the mother sat and the father stood nearby and watched. Suddenly, the mother walked up and nosed the two kittens away, and Henry knew that was enough for the day. He slowly stood up and stood still while the two big cats ushered the small kittens back into the bush. Henry felt so elated. He could have gone back into the town and started work immediately, but he knew that this was just the beginning. He straightened himself up and then pushed maybe another half inch to stand very tall. He began whistling before stepping off on his left foot, almost at a march. The contrast between Henry's normal everyday life and the life that he experienced when he walked out in this part of the island was amazing. As he moved further into the bushland, he realized he was actually in another world. Time disappeared, and the beauty of the interaction between Henry, the trees, and the wind, and his feelings in general took over every part of him. As he walked along, he was familiar with the world he was in, and he loved it. Not at any stage did he consider the desire for one world over another. He just loved it where he was and what he was doing. He walked for almost 30 minutes without really taking much notice of anything else except his surroundings. All of a sudden, he came across some familiar paths and realized he was heading towards Joseph's Hill. He had no intention of going to Joseph's Hill. He had only wanted to take a walk. But as soon as he recognized where he was, he decided he would have to pay a visit to his favorite spot. It would take longer, but that was okay. He quickened his pace and moved along briskly with the total aim of arriving at his special place so that he could spend some time in what he thought might be meditation, but in fact he now knew to be another dimension. The thought of Joseph's Hill really opened Henry's being a lot more than it was already, and he started to feel the interaction with the other worlds. He had no idea how to explain it, however, he always enjoyed it. He could never understand how it would drift out of his life only to come back in with such reality that it seemed like it had never been missing in the first place. Once again, he felt like he was walking above the ground. It had only seemed like a short time had gone by when he arrived at that familiar turnoff to Joseph's Hill. Incredibly, it was like replaying an old movie because right there in front of him and walking towards him was young Bill Summers. Bill had obviously decided to head in the same direction, but he wasn't looking in Henry's direction when Henry spotted him. Henry quickly stepped off to the side to give Bill a surprise, and just as Bill turned to head up to Joseph's Hill, Henry stepped out beside him. To Henry's surprise, Bill just said, "Hi, Henry. Going my way?" "I thought I had you bluffed," said Henry. "I was sure you didn't see me. You didn't even look up." "I didn't have to, Henry. I could feel you a mile off," said Bill. "I knew you were here." "What do you mean you could feel me a mile off?" asked Henry. "You're totally buzzing," said Bill. "You're really out there, and there's something really exciting happening around you at the moment." "Yeah, I do feel great," said Henry. "I can assure you that you'll feel more than great," said Bill. "Let's keep walking." Bill and Henry walked side by side in silence to where Henry needed to be, his special place. Bill stayed for a few minutes before turning to Henry. "I think you need to be alone here, Henry. I'll head off to my little spot, but I'm sure we'll catch up on the way. For now, though, it's important for each of us to go to where we're supposed to be." For some unknown reason, Henry could not think of anything to say, so he simply nodded. He knew that it was necessary to talk to Bill, but he did not know what it was about or why. He had no idea where Bill was heading off to and did not say a word as Bill disappeared into the bush. Bill was on his way to his special place, the place that he and his father had always visited. Henry sat for a moment, and then out of nowhere he felt a sudden breeze. It came out of the trees, but the trees did not move. He felt a shudder go through his body as the breeze came to a standstill before him. He could see something, but he could not make out what it was. Whatever it was caused a shimmer, but was transparent. He looked away and could see that everything was clear, but when he looked back, he could still see the shimmer. It was just like when you look out over a desert. With a slight buzz, the temperature changed to a comfortable degree of warmth. Henry knew there was contact being made between himself and another being. Henry had a very open mind and never assumed anything. He asked out loud, "To whom am I speaking?" There was a delay before the answer came back. "This is Simeon." "And who else, Simeon?" asked Henry. "There are many angels here at the moment, Henry. Many angels," answered Simeon. "You're about to embark on a whole new direction in your life. There will be many changes made today. There will be many things that you will feel, and there will be many things that you will see." Henry gasped a little. He had had this feeling all day, and he knew there were so many critical things that had to happen. "Can you tell me more, Simeon?" he asked. Simeon replied very calmly, "Henry, you will lose some possessions, but you will open up the lives of many people, and you will formulate the life that you have always wondered about for your future. This will all happen today." Henry's brain could not piece all this together. He started to try to reason, and that same confusing pressure came over him once again. His body suddenly shuddered, and he shook his head. "I'm sorry, Simeon," he said. "This head of mine gets in the way occasionally." "That will never happen again, Henry," explained Simeon. "There is no reason for you to try to figure out anything. There is no reason to try to figure out what actually is. The only thing that is needed is for you to experience it. You've experienced your friends, the cats, and you didn't ask why. Now experience all of your other friends and don't ask why." Henry felt his body relax and his vision change. He felt a new kind of freedom, and he knew that he had to ask no more. As soon as he realized this, he felt the comfort of the angels closing in around him, and he felt himself being lifted way above the trees to where he could look down and see the overall picture of the island. A voice said, "You'll make this one, and you will make these people one, and you will start it all today." Henry knew beyond doubt that the vision was clear, and it was nothing that his mind could have made up, because he had never ever seen the whole picture of the island before. He knew that he could paint that picture if he needed to, and as he looked down, he could see that sections of the island were highlighted, areas he had never been to, and areas that he was familiar with all seemed to glow. As his attention moved from one to the other, a picture came to each one, a picture that had no real form but held a lot of knowledge. Somehow each place had planted details within Henry that he did not have to question. Then, just as quickly as he had been raised above the trees, he was returned. The moment he returned, Simeon said, "All instructions are within you. Allow them to happen and enjoy them, and know that we are with you always, not just here, but everywhere." The voice of Simeon faded with the last words, and Henry felt himself snapped back into reality or out of reality, depending on how you see it. He felt himself physically back in the world, and he could feel the coldness of the rock beneath him that he was sitting on. He quickly asked, "Simeon, what will I do about the supplies for Norwich?" The answer did not come back in words, but the immediate response in his mind was to find Bill Summers. Henry got up quickly and was about to follow in Bill's footsteps when he felt the pressure of the angels against him. So he sat back down and enjoyed their presence. His concern for the supplies for the island soon disappeared in amongst the beautiful sensations of the angelic presence. Bill's special place was only a matter of 100 yards down the hill from Henry's spot on Joseph's Hill. It was a place that he was sure no one had ever discovered before. When he got there, he was assured that it was his special place. The presence of his father was so clear as he walked into the small clearing, and the welcome that he felt was unmistakable. He made a note to himself that this little spot, which had not been discovered by others, felt quite crowded and yet exciting and very uplifting. As Bill sat down, he performed his usual exercise. It was an exercise that had been taught to him by his father. It involved giving up everything and letting everything go to the trees, and to let everything go to his Creator. He would allow himself to empty his mind of all concerns and responsibility before declaring that whatever concern, responsibility, or plans stay with him when he leaves the clearing, he will honor, while all others will stay and disappear into the earth. This exercise always worked for Bill, and within moments, the load of the world disappeared from his shoulders. As soon as he had completed this, the pictures began to flow. He had only received pictures once before, and that was the time just after he had met Suzanne. This time, though, the pictures were clear and extensive. He saw how so many people were to work for him, and so many people would enjoy working with him. He saw how Suzanne and the family were alongside him all the time, and how he would fish and travel, and how he spoke to people and organized so many things that he had no understanding of. The pictures that came to him were of a whole new world, a world he had never seen before, and yet they also included the world he knew at the moment. They never left anything of his present world out. It was like his capacity for life had multiplied by 10, and his activities increased by 10. As these pictures flowed in and Bill took on the feelings, he remembered the words of his father. Whatever stays with you when you leave here will work and will be totally supported. So see what you see and enjoy what you see. Feel what you feel and enjoy the feeling. Hear what you hear and enjoy the words you hear. Hold on to nothing, because what has to stay with you will stay in you. stay with you, and will reappear each time it's needed. So Bill enjoyed the pictures. It was like many different stories all rolled up into one, with Suzanne and himself as the characters in every scene. The final scene was in great detail and showed Bill talking to Henry and arranging a whole new business right there on the hill. It also showed how the financial side would work and who had to be involved. Bill found it difficult to let those final scenes drift from his mind. The detail was so clear and was so current that he tended to hang on. When the pictures finished, Bill sat and totally cleared his mind. He felt the beautiful feelings of the trees and all those present, and he knew that Simeon was involved because there was nothing else and nobody else who could provide such detail. When Bill felt it was time to leave, his head cleared and he stood up. He felt incredibly fulfilled as he took his first step. He felt himself growing taller, and with his second step, he knew that he was much more of a man than he was when he had walked into the clearing. As he moved along the narrow passage through the dense trees, his head and his heart, which were both now cleared, started to fill with the presence of Henry Olsen. When Bill emerged from the trees, he turned directly to where he had come from and knew that he had to find Henry. As soon as he arrived at the clearing, the place where he left Henry, he stopped because he could see the image of Henry with a glow around it, a glow that was coming from something else, not from Henry. It was like he was engulfed, and there was a very soft white mist all around him. As he watched, the mist opened on one side to reveal Henry very clearly to Bill. Henry turned and said, "Please join me, Bill." Bill walked over and sat down and immediately felt that he had been invited into a special circle, a circle that seemed to be closed off to the rest of the world. Henry and Bill sat for a moment, and then Bill began to talk. All of a sudden, it seemed like the roles had changed, and Henry became the listener, and Bill found himself sitting tall and passing on information about all of the pictures that had been shown to him earlier. Henry, the great businessman, was now being taught by Bill how to bring everything together to make the people of the island create the future for themselves, a future that would interest everyone and that would include everybody's dreams. To Henry's amazement, everything that Bill spoke of, although new, seemed to be familiar in some way. Even though Henry listened, he did not retain the words in his mind, yet he nodded over and over as Bill spoke the words. At the end of their conversation, everything went quiet. Even the birds became quiet, and then the circle that engulfed them gradually disappeared, and they could feel the coolness of the breeze once again. They felt the slight harshness of the weather, and both looked at one another and shook their heads a little to take away the haze. "Bill, that was simply amazing," said Henry. "You sure are more than what you seem. It looks like you will make a very important difference in a lot of people's lives. One of the things you spoke about was an open supply line to your part of this island. Where did you, where did that idea come from?" Bill shook his head and answered, "I don't know, but it fits, and I'm sure that it suits Willie, and I'm sure all the other things suit John. There are other people I can see who are associated with Willie and John who will need the knowledge that has passed through to us." Both Bill and Henry were still a little dazed. They sat for a while before Bill spoke again. "I think it's time to go, Henry. We both have things to do, and I know this will all come together. We don't have to worry about what happens, but I think when we're told to move, we have to move." "I understand," said Henry. "Let's go then. I have to be back soon anyway, and I know that you'll have things organized by the time the day is through. I also know that all of the details will come together very quickly." Bill jumped up and shook his head a little. "Wow, it's all a bit much for me. I think I'll get underway and just let it all happen." "Fine, I'll see you later," said Henry. They both stood and headed off down the hill. Nothing was said by either Henry or Bill until they reached the point where they would have to part company. "Well, you know I came here for a walk and had intended to go and see Willie, but I don't feel like I have to do that now," said Henry. "Well, I came here for a walk also, and I had no thought of Willie, but now I know I have to go and see him," said Bill. Henry laughed, wrapped his arm around Bill, and said, "Thanks, Bill. It's great working with you. I'll talk to you later. Bye for now." It sounded a little like a telephone conversation, but Bill did the same. As Bill knocked on the door to Willie's home, he saw the sign once again, John and Willie Voltage, and all of the memories flooded back. After knocking for a while, he found there was no answer, so he walked over to the boat shed and found that it was closed. He knew that it was important to make contact with Willie, although he had no idea how to do it. He felt a little empty inside and felt he was letting himself down in some way by not contacting Willie. He looked around for a while and tried to get into the shed and then the house, but the doors were locked. Bill headed off home knowing that his day had not ended the way it was supposed to. On his way home, he called in to see if Willem was back at the shop, but he wasn't there. He called in to see Simon Guthridge, but Simon was asleep. So it seemed like Bill was being blocked as nobody was available. He decided to go back to the thoughts and feelings of what had happened earlier and realized that he did not have to do anything. However, he did have to understand that he was the key to the whole operation, and that was what was to be determined on that day. When he arrived home, Suzanne was surprised because she knew that he was actually supposed to be somewhere else. "Bill, I know you're supposed to be in Norwich. What's happened?" "Norwich? I had no intention of going to Norwich," said Bill. "But didn't you listen?" asked Suzanne. "Listen to what?" asked Bill. Suzanne stopped, and he could see her focusing somewhere in the distance, but he had no idea what she was seeing. "There's still time, Bill," she said. "You have to go and see Willem." "I tried to see Willem, but he wasn't home," said Bill. "That's because he's in Norwich," explained Suzanne. "That's right," sighed Bill. "How stupid of me. But if I go to Norwich now, it may be very late by the time I get back." "You probably won't get back before tomorrow," said Suzanne. "There's a lot to do, Bill, and everyone's depending on you." When Bill looked at Suzanne, he said, "I don't know what's happened, Suzanne, but you're so switched on. You know exactly what's happening." Suzanne smiled and put her arms around his neck lovingly. "I might be switched on, but there's nothing so special about knowing that when you get a message to go and see someone and they are not at their home, you should find out where they are. If you had a little bit of a think, you would have known that it was only a few days ago that you left Willem in Norwich. So it's nothing special, just a little bit of female intuition and a little bit of knowledge. It's as simple as that, Bill." Bill smiled. "You might say it's simple, and you might cover up things a little, but I know when you're looking out into the distance that you're not just thinking." Suzanne gave him a kiss and said, "Be on your way, Bill. I'll see you when you get back." Bill gave Suzanne a gentle squeeze in return and said, "I'm looking forward to being back here with you, but I know that I have to go. See you later." "See you," replied Suzanne as she watched him walk out the door. Bill headed off with his stride a little higher than he had expected. It seemed like he was being driven once again by some force that was outside of his control. He settled in and enjoyed the movement and the additional speed in his stride. And that ends chapter 47. And once again, thank you for joining me as I read this fantastic book. And until next time, I wish you perfect life, a perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.